Hello.
What should we call you, Kenneth or Mr. Branagh?
Ken. You
Ken.
can call me. There
Even
you
better.
go.
Yeah.
I'm over there.
Hello. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to see you. All right, fire away, guys.
Well, I mean, you come from a background of doing, like you were talking about on stage, doing some Shakespearean films and things like that. Now doing a comic book adaptation. Obviously, there's a lot of eyes on this because you have kind of that sophisticated film background. What exactly was it that you wanted to bring to this being a comic book project that would separate it out from some of the other comic book adaptations?
Well, it's funny. It's an interesting way you put it because, see, I don't really see it the same way in terms of me. The sort of implication is that somehow I come from some higher brow kind of thing coming to a medium which is so lower brow, and I don't regard it in that way at all. The comics are unbelievably sophisticated, created by intelligent, very creative people who choose to work in a particular medium where the big challenge is actually to reduce and make things simple. And when I say simple, I think that's the hardest thing to do. I don't mean simplistic, but simple, be rich, be layered, and be economic. Now, I've always wanted to do that, and when it comes to Shakespeare, one of the great populists of our time, a guy who wrote plays. If his plays weren't working, they were off the next week. So it's almost as if he were writing comic books, it would be that title doesn't work. I've listened, there's terrible feedback. That's So I think it's not so different.
Yeah.
So how do you take such an epic scale of a story like this and condense it with? There's origin story involved? I'm assuming. And
Yes, yeah. I think
how do you get all of that into a movie?
it's bloody difficult, I tell you. When I arrived about 2 years ago, there had been about 4 or 5 years of development in which some excellent scripts had emerged. Some that stayed entirely on Viking Earth, some that stayed entirely in the world of the gods and some of the other exotic worlds that the comics have. I was convinced that we needed to be in contemporary Earth in order to address the origin story, in order to be able to make a contemporary audience understand how how we could kind of accept the idea of these kinds of creatures coming to Earth. The current JMS run of THOR, maybe it's not so current now, but tackles that in an interesting way and was inspiring in that way. It was just an instinct that we should have a contemporary element that would root us, anchor us, and then we would just try and pile things in, reduce, make simple, pile things in, reduce, make simple, and eventually try and come up with something that isn't just trying to tick the boxes, but gets as much in as possible.
How do you balance paying homage to the source material and then taking this and making it your own?
I think, you start, I read and read a gazillion copies of THOR. There's the Norse myths, pulled out anything I thought was an interesting incident about, whatever it is, Odin giving up his eye or whatever, or classic stories from the comics, and then see, well, okay, what do we think works, and what can be in some way in there that isn't too packed. I think a temptation is throw everything. They like that. That's a favorite one. Put this one in, maybe, and then suddenly you haven't got that backbone. We were looking for a backbone. The backbone, in a way, is the story of exile and return. It's a prodigal son story against which, a lot of other things can hang.
Were you a fan of comic books before this? Were there any favorites that you used to read?
To be truthful, and I'm not just saying, I read English comics and I didn't really read American comics, but I did read THOR. THOR at that stage, and I first came across it in Belfast when I was a kid, 8, 9 years old, felt more familiar to me. The clothes they wore felt more familiar. For me, didn't watch as much television, etc. The world of, Gotham or, American landscape wasn't familiar to me. I don't know, guys with big horn helmets, I felt more familiar with that, and I liked the kind of savagery of it. I liked the blood and guts.
I'm curious about working with Chris as somebody who's such a newcomer in such a big role. Did that present certain challenges?
It did, because you're also, you're always taking a chance. You knew that you had very specific challenges. You've got to be a big guy. You've got to be prepared to do all that hard work working out. He's got to, and yet we put a lot of faith into the passionate relationship between him and Jane Foster in this. So he needed to have that, needed to be able to listen as well. It couldn't just be, I didn't want him to be just that, even though maybe the story in parts he is, but he has a real character arc to go to. So you needed somebody who was ready for that journey, ready to do all of that, was excited about doing a chewy acting scene as he was about doing a fantastic action moment. And he was up for that for sure. Yeah. Yeah, got to run, guys.
very much.
Yes, I would. Yeah.
Thank you.
The trailer looks phenomenal.
Thanks very much. I can't tell you in the week running up to this, it's been an anxious time. We wanted to get it right. I'm glad it looks as though we did. Thanks for coming.